7 Stoic rules that make you fear no one. Fear governs more of modern life than most people are willing to admit. It hides behind politeness, ambition, compliance, and distraction. It appears as the need to be liked, the urge to explain oneself, the hesitation to speak honestly, and the constant calculation of how others might react. Much of this fear is not caused by danger, but by attention placed in the wrong direction. When your sense of safety depends on other people's opinions, moods, or decisions, fear becomes unavoidable. Stoic philosophy begins from a simple but demanding insight. Fear does not come from events or from other people themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. You do not fear others because they are powerful. You fear them because you believe they can take something from you that you are not prepared to lose. Reputation, comfort, approval, stability, or the illusion of control. These are the currencies fear trades in. The Stoics did not seek fearlessness through dominance or emotional hardness. They sought it through clarity, by understanding what belongs to you and what does not, by placing your sense of worth in character rather than outcome, and by accepting the nature of change and loss. Fear gradually loses its authority. No one can intimidate a person who is no longer bargaining with life. The rules you are about to hear are not abstract ideals and not motivational slogans. They are disciplines meant to be practiced quietly, often invisibly, in ordinary situations where fear usually takes hold. Conversations, decisions, failures, and moments of pressure applied consistently. They do not make you aggressive or indifferent. They make you steady. To fear no one does not mean to disrespect others or deny risk. It means that no human being holds power over your inner direction. That freedom is the foundation of a calm and resilient life. You control your judgments, your intentions, and your actions. You do not control how others interpret them, whether they approve, or how events unfold afterward. The moment you expect control where none exists, fear enters. You begin to manage impressions, anticipate rejection, and avoid clarity. You shrink your speech and soften your convictions, not because reason demands it, but because fear does. Fear begins the moment you confuse your responsibilities with the world's behavior. Most people live as if other people's reactions, decisions, and judgments are extensions of their own will. They are not. This confusion creates anxiety, resentment, and hesitation. Stoicism treats this error as the root of emotional slavery. Principle 1. Master the boundary between what you control and what you do not. In modern life, this rule applies everywhere. At work, fear arises when your sense of worth depends on evaluations, promotions, or praise. In relationships, fear appears when honesty feels dangerous because it might disturb comfort or approval. In public life, fear grows when silence seems safer than principled speech. In each case, the mistake is the same: treating external responses as obligations rather than contingencies. The Stoic discipline is to draw a firm boundary and defend it relentlessly. When you speak truthfully, act with integrity, and make decisions grounded in reason, your responsibility ends there. If others misunderstand, disapprove, or oppose you, that belongs to them. Their reactions are external events, no different in essence from weather or noise. You acknowledge them, but you do not negotiate with them. This principle removes fear because it removes false stakes. No one can threaten what you do not place in their hands. When approval is not yours to control, it no longer determines your behavior. When outcomes are recognized as uncertain by nature, failure loses its power to paralyze you. You act because it is right to act, not because you can guarantee the result. Fear fades when you stop arguing with reality. Master the boundary. Guard it daily. Within it lies freedom. Practicing this principle does not make you careless or indifferent. It makes you precise. You prepare thoroughly, speak carefully, and act deliberately, but you release attachment to how it lands. This quiet detachment is not weakness. It is strength without tension. When someone attempts to intimidate you, they rely on one assumption, that they can influence your inner direction by threatening an external outcome. Once that assumption fails, their power collapses. You remain calm, not because you are brave in the dramatic sense, but because nothing essential is at risk. Principle 2. Withdraw your need for validation. Fear of other people survives only where validation is required. The more your sense of worth depends on being recognized, approved of, or affirmed, the more vulnerable you become to pressure. This dependence is subtle. It often disguises itself as politeness, professionalism, or ambition. Yet beneath it lies a simple exchange. Approval is traded for compliance, silence, or self-betrayal. Stoicism treats this dependence as a form of inner poverty. When you look outward to be confirmed, you hand over authority that rightly belongs to reason. You begin to measure yourself through applause, metrics, and reactions. In doing so, you allow others to define the value of your actions, even when those actions are guided by principle. The Stoic alternative is not arrogance or isolation. It is self-sufficiency. A Stoic grounds worth in character rather than reception. You assess yourself by asking whether your actions were honest, disciplined, and aligned with reason. If they were, praise adds nothing. If they were not, praise is meaningless. This internal standard becomes the axis around which your life turns. Modern fear thrives on exposure. Social platforms, performance culture, and constant comparison train people to monitor how they are seen rather than how they act. The result is anxiety disguised as self-improvement. When every action is performed for reaction, silence feels like rejection and disagreement feels like threat. The Stoic withdraws from this economy, not by retreating from society, but by refusing to let society assign value to his inner state. When you no longer need validation, manipulation loses its effectiveness. Flattery cannot pull you forward, and criticism cannot push you back. You listen to feedback without bending to it. You accept correction without humiliation. You endure misunderstanding without defensiveness. This composure is not emotional numbness. It is alignment. This principle does not eliminate relationships. It purifies them. When approval is no longer demanded, interactions become honest. You speak because it is true, not because it is popular. You stand firm without hostility and yield without resentment. Others sense this independence instinctively. Some will respect it, some will resist it. Neither reaction governs you. Fear of others fades when you stop asking them who you are. You already know. Principle 3. Accept loss before it arrives. Fear tightens its grip when you believe something essential can be taken from you. Status, comfort, security, relationships, reputation, when these are treated as possessions rather than temporary arrangements, they become leverage. The Stoics understood that attachment is the silent partner of fear. What you refuse to imagine losing will quietly govern your behavior. Stoic practice reverses this relationship by facing loss deliberately before life forces the encounter. This is not pessimism and not self-denial. It is preparation. By calmly acknowledging that everything external is fragile and impermanent, you remove its power to threaten you. What is already accepted cannot be used as a weapon. When you accept loss in advance, courage becomes practical. You speak honestly because silence no longer protects anything sacred. You take measured risks because failure has been accounted for. You resist injustice because consequences have been faced internally. This quiet readiness dissolves fear without confrontation. Most modern anxiety is not about present pain, but imagined deprivation. People fear being excluded, failing publicly, falling behind, or becoming irrelevant. These fears persist because the mind treats these outcomes as unbearable. The Stoic challenges that assumption directly. You ask whether loss of comfort destroys character. You ask whether rejection prevents virtue. You ask whether a change in circumstance can touch your capacity to reason and act well. The answer is always no. This principle also transforms how you experience success. When you know that what you gain is temporary, you hold it lightly. Gratitude replaces clinging. Presence replaces anxiety. You enjoy without fear of expiration, because expiration has already been acknowledged. Those who rely on intimidation depend on your refusal to imagine loss. They imply that something will be taken if you do not comply. The Stoic has already faced that possibility and found it survivable. Once this realization settles, fear has nowhere to attach. In relationships, this acceptance creates emotional clarity. You care deeply without possession. You give loyalty without dependency. You remain steady in separation because your identity was never fused to another person's presence. This does not make you cold. It makes your attachment clean rather than desperate. To accept loss is to remove fear's foundation. Nothing remains except choice. Principle 4. Commit to reason, not comfort. Our fear often presents itself as the instinct to avoid discomfort. Difficult conversations are postponed, boundaries are softened, and truth is diluted in the name of peace. Over time, this habit trains the mind to associate clarity with danger. The result is a quiet erosion of self-respect, followed by anxiety that has no clear source. Where Stoicism draws a firm distinction between comfort and correctness. Comfort is passive and short-lived. Reason is active and stable. When you prioritize comfort, you begin to live reactively, adjusting yourself to avoid friction. When you commit to reason, you accept friction as a natural byproduct of integrity. This principle does not ask you to seek conflict or display toughness. It asks you to act according to what you judge to be right, regardless of the emotional climate. When reason governs action, fear loses its function. There is no calculation of how to avoid displeasure, only an assessment of what is appropriate and necessary. In modern environments, fear of confrontation is often disguised as professionalism or diplomacy. People hesitate to speak clearly because they fear tension, misunderstanding, or social consequence. The Stoic approach is neither reckless nor timid. You choose words carefully, speak without excess, and remain open to correction. But you do not abandon truth to preserve comfort. When disagreement arises, this commitment steadies you. You do not escalate because your aim is not victory. You do not retreat because your aim is not approval. You remain anchored in reason, listening without submission and responding without hostility. This posture is disarming. It denies fear its usual scripts. Over time, this practice changes how others relate to you. Some will test your boundaries, expecting you to yield as before. When you do not, intimidation loses its rhythm. Others will recognize consistency and trust it. In both cases, your inner state remains the same. Fear depends on avoidance. The more you avoid discomfort, the more powerful it becomes. When you accept discomfort as a neutral condition rather than a threat, fear loses its leverage. Reason does not promise ease, but it offers coherence. And coherence is the soil in which calm grows. To live by reason is to stand upright without tension. In that posture, fear finds no place to stand. Principle 5. Anchor yourself in the present judgment. Fear of others is rarely about what is happening now. It is about what might happen next. The mind projects consequences, imagines reactions, and rehearses outcomes that have not occurred. Authority feels threatening, confrontation feels dangerous, and exposure feels unbearable. Not because of present facts, but because of imagined futures layered on top of them. Stoicism treats this habit as a misuse of the mind. The future does not frighten you, your judgments about the future do. When attention drifts forward unchecked, fear multiplies. The Stoic discipline is to return judgment to the present moment, where action is possible and clarity exists. In any situation, there is only one question that matters. What is the reasonable response right now? Not what might follow, not how it will be remembered, not how it could be interpreted. When you confine yourself to present judgment, fear collapses into manageable proportions. The future loses its weight because it no longer dictates your conduct. Modern life actively trains the opposite habit. Notifications, metrics, deadlines, and social comparison keep attention suspended ahead of itself. People live in anticipation rather than engagement. Anxiety thrives in this gap. The Stoic resists it by narrowing focus deliberately. You act on what is known, not on what is speculated. This principle applies directly to fear of authority and social power. Titles, reputations, and hierarchies derive their intimidation from imagined consequences. When you meet the moment itself, the conversation, the decision, the task, the figure in front of you becomes simply another human engaged in the same present reality. Their power shrinks to what is actually enforceable now, not what is feared later. Anchoring judgment in the present does not mean ignoring consequences. It means refusing to let imagined outcomes distort current action. You plan when planning is required. You prepare when preparation is possible. But when action arrives, you act without mental fragmentation. Fear feeds on anticipation. Calm grows from presence. When you train yourself to return to present judgment, you become difficult to rush, pressure, or intimidate. You are no longer negotiating with imagined futures. The present moment, handled with reason, is always sufficient. Principle 6. See power for what it is. Fear of people often intensifies in the presence of authority. Titles, wealth, influence, and institutional power create an illusion of superiority that reaches beyond practical limits and enters the inner life. The Stoics were clear on this point. No external position grants control over your character or judgment unless you consent to it. Power, when examined calmly, is narrow. It can reward, punish, grant access, or withhold opportunity. It cannot make you dishonest without your cooperation. It cannot force you to admire what you judge to be flawed. It cannot diminish your capacity for reason. Fear arises when power is imagined as total rather than partial. Stoicism insists on moral equality among human beings. Differences in rank are matters of circumstance, not essence. The person who commands and the person who obeys are subject to the same laws of nature, the same fragility, and the same mortality. Remembering this is not an act of defiance, it is an act of clarity. In modern settings, authority often operates indirectly. Performance reviews, algorithms, public opinion, and bureaucratic systems exert pressure without a visible face. This makes fear more diffuse and harder to confront. The Stoic response remains the same. Distinguish what authority can do from what it cannot. It can affect your situation. It cannot define your worth. When you see power accurately, intimidation loses its mystique. You comply where reason and necessity require it. You resist inwardly where it conflicts with integrity. You do not confuse obedience with submission of judgment. This inner independence is what the Stoics meant by freedom. Those who rely on their status to command fear sense when it fails. They escalate, posture, or threaten more loudly. The Stoic remains steady, not provocative, not submissive. Calm exposes exaggeration. This principle does not encourage recklessness. It encourages proportion. You take power seriously without exaggerating it. You respect roles without worshipping them. You accept consequences without internal collapse. Fear dissolves when power is seen clearly. Nothing human is absolute. Nothing external is sovereign over the mind. Principle 7. Make peace with mortality. All fear, when followed to its end, points toward one truth people avoid naming: loss, rejection, humiliation, poverty, failure, and powerlessness. All threaten because they are seen as steps towards something final. The Stoics confronted this directly. Death is not the enemy hidden behind fear. It is the natural boundary that gives fear its false urgency. Most people live as if life were guaranteed and only circumstances were uncertain. Stoicism reverses this assumption. Life itself is uncertain. Everything else is secondary. When this is understood clearly, fear begins to lose its scale. Nothing another person can do outweighs the reality that all human authority ends at the same place. Making peace with mortality does not mean courting danger or diminishing life's value. It means removing death from the category of catastrophe. The Stoics saw death as a natural event, neither good nor evil, but inevitable. What matters is how one lives while time remains. When this perspective is internalized, fear of people becomes strangely small. No threat carries absolute weight once you accept that existence itself is temporary. Reputation cannot outlast you. Power cannot follow you. Social judgment dissolves the moment life ends. When these facts are faced honestly, intimidation loses its ultimate leverage. Fear relies on the belief that something irreversible is at stake. Death shows that everything already is. In modern life, mortality is hidden behind distractions, comfort, and noise. People are trained to avoid thinking about it, which only increases fear indirectly. The Stoic does the opposite. By calmly acknowledging finitude, you sharpen attention and reduce dependence. You stop postponing integrity. You stop bargaining with fear for permission to act rightly. This principle unifies all the others. If your judgment is your own, if validation is unnecessary, if loss is accepted, if reason guides action, if the present moment anchors you, and if power is seen clearly, then death becomes confirmation rather than threat. It confirms that fear never deserved authority in the first place. When someone attempts to dominate you through fear, they rely on your instinct to preserve at all costs. The Stoic preserves what matters instead: character, clarity, alignment with reason. These are not threatened by mortality. They are fulfilled by it. To live with death in view is not morbid. It is stabilizing. It strips away false urgency and reveals proportion. From that vantage point, no person looms large enough to frighten you. When you accept the end, you gain the middle. Conclusion: fear does not disappear all at once. It loosens gradually as false beliefs are removed and replaced with clarity. What the Stoics offer is not a personality change, but a realignment. You stop arranging your life around what others might do and begin arranging it around what is right to do. In that shift, fear loses its central role. To fear no one is not to feel nothing. It is to feel proportionately. You recognize risk without exaggeration, authority without distortion, and loss without collapse. You remain human, but no longer negotiable. Calm replaces vigilance. Attention replaces anxiety. This steadiness is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows in restraint, in consistency, and in the ability to stand without hardening. These principles are not meant to be memorized and performed. They are meant to be practiced quietly, in moments that seem insignificant, choosing honesty when it is inconvenient, refusing validation when it is tempting, accepting outcomes without self-pity, and returning again and again to reason. Over time, these small decisions reshape the inner landscape. Modern life rewards reactivity and dependence. It profits from fear. Stoicism offers a different economy, one built on sufficiency. When you need less from the world loses its leverage. When your sense of direction is internal, external pressure weakens. This channel exists for those who value clarity over comfort and discipline over display. If these ideas resonate, return to them. Sit with them, test them in your own experience, not to become fearless in appearance, but to become ungovernable in the ways that matter.